So you got robbed by Archetype Earth, but maybe you were lucky enough to have Summary Buki sit on you. Does that mean you're done for the rest of the year? Can you just coast through the rest of the NA 2024 banners and just not have to worry about any major releases? Unfortunately, no. There are some very major new servants coming out very shortly, and there are some very major reruns that, especially if you're a newer player, that you want to be aware of that we're going to talk about in this video. I'm going to do my best to outline which servants I think are the major must-summon quote-unquote servants that are going to be returning and the new servants that are going to be coming out. So if there's a particular servant coming out that you don't feel got mentioned enough in this video, I want it to be at least semi-watchable and not 35 minutes long. So please at least bear with me on that. And as always, if you do enjoy this type of content and you find it helpful, I would appreciate a like and maybe even a subscription to the channel, as it does help me out more than you know, and it's absolutely free. But with that being said, we're going to start off with the reruns, as I think the reruns are the most major returns and the biggest things to be looking out for coming back to this year on NA. Mainly, that's going to be Castoria, Oberon, and Koyenskaya all coming back right before Lost Belt 7's release, which is very unfortunate timing because, as many of you guys may have heard, Lost Belt 7 is bringing some very powerful units. Now, if you're a newer player and you're wondering, well, I've heard that Castoria, Koyenskaya, and Oberon are all very, very powerful units and they're good supports, who do I prioritize? And after thinking about how I would explain this, I've broken it down as such. Essentially, you would want to go for Castoria or Koyenskaya first. Analyze what servants you have more of in your Chaldea that you're going to use. Is it more arts leaning? Is it more buster leaning? And then also consider servants that you're going to be summoning for in the future. Who are your favorite servants, your husbandos, your wifeys, and just cool guys you like in general? If it leans more arts, then you could prioritize going for Castoria. If it leans more buster, you can go for Koyenskaya. But I do find it more prudent to lock down one of these two over Oberon because they are what enable their card type in its entirety. So you want to go ahead and get one of them, and then if you have leftover Saint Quartz, you can grab Oberon, as Oberon is kind of like an extender for each of the different card types. He helps them all out in different ways. See, for arts, they could pretty much all use Black Grail. Most of the servants are going to be Black Grail compliant, and because of how Oberon's third skill works, it can overload the effect of NP damage, which Black Grail does, and it really helps the art servants do a mountain of damage. For Buster, they can't all use Black Grail. There's only a select elite few that can make use of that, and so to balance that out, Oberon's third skill gives them a massive Buster buff that the art servants can't really use, but hey, the Buster servants may not be getting as much NP overload, but they are at least also getting an additional Buster buff. Now, you may also be asking, well, I did summon for Ruler Scotty. Can I just go for Oberon if I have Ruler Scotty? And it's yes and no, because Quick is in a pretty solid position. With Ruler Scotty coming out, it really helps a lot of those quick servants that were on the brink of being able to loop, and your better servants that were already easily looping use stuff like Black Grail. And so Oberon pretty much functions the same way for Quick as it does for arts, being additional battery and overloading Black Grail setups. The issue is the current meta of 90++. While you can still get away with using Ruler Scotty, I'm not going to take that away from Quick. After all, I'm one of Quick's greatest defenders, and as many of you guys got to experience in the last event on NA, the summer event, you could get away with using Caesar, who is a single target Quick Saber, to do the 90++ node. But there are certain nodes where Quick just struggles a little bit more than Arts and Buster. Even though Arts also relies on looping raw NP back, they at least have split batteries with Castoria, so they can more easily allocate different sources of NP to different servants and even get away with pretty easy multi-core setups. And then Buster just doesn't really care. As long as you can output enough damage, you're going to get through the node anyway. And at worst case, you just have to swap out, your Morgan for an Ibuki or an Arjuna altar. You just cycle through whoever's going to be the best for any one given stage, mainly depending on power mods or whoever's just the highest NP copy unit you've got in your box. Quick kind of functions in both of the same ways, except they don't have the benefit of the split battery that Castoria has, and they can't fully take advantage of Oberon in the same way that Buster can with the extra additional Buster buff. And while some of your better Quick loopers can use Black Grail, because the Quick card isn't as good at looping as the Arts card, it's not as easily accessible for every single Quick unit as it is every single Arts unit. So while I would say that yes, you could just go for Oberon if you do have Ruler Scotty, and maybe you go for a servant that's going to be coming out very soon over here on the NA side of things in the next event we're going to be getting, it would still be nice to not put all of your eggs in one basket, in my opinion. I would still at least go for Koyenskaya or Castoria to at least diversify your box and maybe give yourself access to other units. After all, I myself on the JP side of things do not have Oberon. I do not have Koyenskaya. I just have Castoria, and I've been able to get through some 90++ nodes just fine. So even securing her can get you through 90++ nodes. You just have to be a little bit more creative event by event, but it's still possible to get done. Although if you are a quick ride or die, it is completely fine to go summon for Oberon and then just pretty much main using quick. That's also perfectly fine. It's more or less, what do you want to do? Although if you are going to ride or die quick, I would highly recommend turning your attention to the next limited servant that's going to be coming out on the NA side of things, that being Senno Rikyu. There are 3 quick AoE servants that are coming out in succession this year, and all 3 of them are good. Britomart is very strong, Yugioh is very strong, but unfortunately, Senno Rikyu is just the best of the 3 by a pretty decent chunk. She's kind of like the Summer Ibuki of the quick meta, although I don't think she's as good as Summer Ibuki. She fills the same role. Rocking good bonus damage, being a berserker, having the battery, plus the strong card buff, NP gain, she's just really good and has very few flaws. If you are going to go the route of maybe just trying to secure Oberon with your Summer Scotty, I would highly recommend trying to lock down Senno Rikyu, as that will be your main quick AoE DPS, and with her, especially if you picked up Black Grail, you will be in a pretty decent position. Just be aware that moving forward, there are 90++ nodes that don't play very nicely with quick. If the node starts off with, say, 2 enemies, then leads into 1 enemy, and then finishes with 1 enemy, that doesn't really lead to quick getting the most NP refund and can really hurt your chances at consistently getting through some farms. But if you are wanting to put yourself in the best position with quick, it is highly recommended to go for Senno Rikyu, and if you can, you do probably want to secure an extra copy if possible, as with the advent of 90++ nodes, getting at least that extra copy for your main looper is more crucial than ever. Now, I will say, if you absolutely despise Senno Rikyu, you don't like her design, maybe you just don't like her in the story, maybe you just don't like T and you just don't want to summon for her, you'd rather use the big booby servants, either Yugioh or Britomart. Those are both perfectly fine options. They're going to struggle a little bit more, as again, them being main classes aside from Berserker, they don't have that super effective against pretty much everybody that Berserkers really benefit very hard off of. But again, if you invest a couple of copies into them, especially with them, if you start going on the NP3 and plus route, you can kind of ride off them, but again, 90++ will vary a lot as opposed to using, say, a Berserker that is always going to be super effective. I didn't want to discount both of those units because I think they're both very good, but obviously, if there's one to highlight, it's going to be Senno Rikyu. Now, you might also be wondering, ZTL, why did you not highlight the other servants that are coming out right before Lost Belt 7? We're getting very powerful reruns with Morgan, with Melusine, and even Muramasa's coming back, and I agree, all 3 of those servants are very, very strong. Especially Morgan and Melusine. Melusine functionally being a very solid single target arts lancer, not the best by any stretch of the imagination, but she's solid enough that you functionally get a good single target unit and one of the best buster AoE servants in the game. She has that Space Ishtar level of value where you get 2 units for the price of 1. And again, even though the single target version of Melusine isn't like the best single target in the game, she can get through content just fine. It doesn't matter that she's not the best because she'll still be able to clear content regardless, and you also have in the back pocket that really strong buster AoE servant. You know how I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago that not every buster servant can use Black Grail? Well, Melusine is one of those few elite that are able to do it pretty easily. And so that gives her a lot of value because being able to take advantage of Black Grail gives you full access to Oberon's 3rd skill. Not only do you get the very large buster buff, but you also get to take full advantage of overloading your NP damage, and it leads to her hitting rather hard. The same thing could be said for Morgan. Not only is she fairly decent if you want to use her in farming nodes, just do keep in mind if you go for her at NP1, no matter what cope you'll see in the comments or on Twitter, Discord, NP1, she hits like an absolute wet paper towel. Take it from me, someone that has her at NP1 on JP and NP5 on the NA side of things. No power mod, NP1, NP5, she does not do a whole lot of damage, but the value comes when you have that man power mod, which is fairly prevalent. And do also keep in mind, she does have power mod on Fays and Knights of the Round Table, which does technically let her hit some Earth attribute enemies, as again, most of the Knights of the Round Table and the Fays are going to be Earth attributes. So she kind of gets to double dip a little bit into other attributes. She also has the benefit of being very good going into CQs, and if you want to use her primarily for challenge quest content, maybe you already have Arjuna Altar to farm, you just want Morgan to more secure your setups with the Immortal team comps, with your Merlins and your Castorias, and that's what you want to use her for, then the NP level doesn't matter as much because you're going to be there for 20 turns anyway. It doesn't really make a difference if you finish it in 23 turns. But with that being said, it's hard for me to recommend Morgan or Melusine when the far more important supports are going to be on rate up around the same time. FGO is a game that revolves around its supports. Once you lock those characters down, you functionally can kind of get away with whatever you want. Even servants like, say, Saber Nero, the 4-star one that only has one hit on her art's AoE NP, you can get away with her being able to loop. It's not pretty, but Castoria being such a strong support can let her get away with that. Koyenskaya basically says, if you have a 50% battery, welcome to Buster looping. There's obviously some 30% battery servants or 40% battery servants like, say, Ruler Artoria or Saber Artoria or Saber Altar who will get a buff that will also be able to loop without the use of Oberon, with just using the double Koyenskaya and plug suiting in something like a Waver or something. Those are more of the exception, but yeah, she opens the door to pretty much all 50% battery servants, and then if you have Oberon, pretty much every 30% battery servant is also just up for grabs for being able to do whatever you want. And so locking down those supports, even though people like Morgan, and I know it's weird coming from me, the biggest Morgan simp on the platform, but I don't want to lead you astray and tell you that, hey, go for a character that I really like and just skip out on these supports that are going to make your life so much easier and let you just access a lot of power from your Chaldea that you just weren't able to access before. So even though she is my big wifey servant and I'm a huge simp for her, I would tell you that if you're not going to be going for Senno Riku, you don't really care about doing anything quick related, you save for those supports at the end of the year. It's also really hard for me to recommend going for somebody like Morgan because of the Lost Belt 7 banners, where I probably don't have to tell you there are two very powerful servants coming out. We're going to be getting Kukulkan and Tezcatlipoca. Now, Kukulkan needs no introduction. People have not shut up about this servant for the last 2 years, and for very good reason. Not only is she absolutely adorable and great in the story, but she is absolutely broken. Whatever you would want a servant to have, she's got it. Numerous power mods? Check. Big damage? Check. Big battery? Check. The ability to steal Solemn Defense's gimmick away from Castoria? Check. She is one of those servants that is so immensely pushed that you kinda gotta be a fool to not pull for her. Although I understand if you're not going to roll for her, because I myself am going to be saving for the Lilim Harlot collab, so it will feel kind of bad to skip out on her. But if you want basically one of the, if not the best Buster AoE servant in the game, you just wait for Kukulkan. And as much as I love Morgan, she really cannot compete. Then there's Tezcatlipoca, who was one of my units who I wanted to say was one of the best units that released on that year for JP because of how good the guy is, but the competition for the next upcoming year in JP is just so dense that I think he was like number 6 in my top 5 units that came out for that year. He's very, very close to being up there. In fact, I think if you wanted to make the argument that he was in the top 5, you could get away with it. Not only is he a very strong arts AoE servant, he has his own meta composition, meaning you can just use 2 Tezcatlipocas and get away with it. In fact, during the last Christmas lottery event over on the JP side of things, one of the 90+ nodes was just optimal to take down with double Tezcatlipoca. Same thing with double Taigong, as I'm a big Taigong fan, I gotta just give him a little shout out there. But Tetz also had a setup, which was really good, because he's just one of those DPS servants that also supports the party rather well, giving everybody battery, giving everybody buffs, and when you have 2 of them floating around, they can just kind of both simultaneously blow up the nodes. I do feel as though he's going to be a bit overshadowed because Kukulkan is not only a wifey servant, but let's be honest, she's probably better overall. She's just ridiculously broken. But I have seen some comments of people that are going to be going for Tetz, and I wish you guys the best of luck. Now, the major elephant in the room is actually the collaboration that comes a few months after Lost Belt 7 wraps up. Around the month of April, which seems very far out, we're going to be getting a very major celebration. And I'm only mentioning this even though it's technically not in this year of 2024, 2024 for us, it is such a big deal that I feel like it does deserve mentioning, especially if you are more of a free-to-play player and you might not be aware of how good these units are. I'm of course talking about Lilim Harlot or the FGO Arcade collaboration, where there are two limited servants that we're going to be getting. The first is Tiamat and the second is Draco. Tiamat, I feel, kind of gets swept under the rug a little bit. Even though everybody's really excited for her, it does seem that more people are concerned about Draco, which makes sense. Introduces the beast typing. She's very, very broken. We'll talk about her in a second, but do not overlook Tiamat. Tiamat herself is very, very powerful. She is one of the very exclusive few Buster servants that is able to farm using Black Grail, and she already does ridiculously high damage, so being able to also use Black Grail on top of that is a bit nutty. Her alter ego classing a few years ago might have been seen as a detriment, but I have seen it as more of a positive because it lets you use her as somewhat of a pseudo berserker. You can use her to fight riders, assassins, casters, obviously berserkers, because pretty much everybody can fight berserkers, but it does mean she'll be very useful to you in a lot of different stages. Sure, it does cut her off of being able to go neutral into sabers, archers, and lancers because, you know, alter ego is weak against the knight classes. But to be honest, you're not really going in neutral into most nodes anyway, so that doesn't really matter. She hits really hard and it's just fun to use. Who does not like to see big numbers go up? And you also get to use Mom. But I did say she was overshadowed by Draco for a reason, and that is because Draco is just ridiculous. One of the best single target units in the game, in my opinion. I've had a bit of a history with Draco where when she came out, I said that she was one of the best single target units in the game. Then after about a month, I was like, okay, maybe she's not like one of the best, but she's definitely up there. And then as of late, using her for the better part of like almost 2 years now, I've kind of gone back to that same position of her being one of the best single target units in the game. Because with no Oberon, no event power mod, you can just stroll up with your Draco with the free Black Grail you got and start doming people from anywhere to 800,000 to over 1 million damage. Again, no Oberon because I don't have Oberon. No event damage bonus because we're just bringing them to free quests, and you can just dome people for that amount of damage. She is ridiculous. She hits monstrously hard. That is because her beast classing is super effective against all of the main types. So functionally, she's a berserker without the drawbacks, but here's the kicker. Not only is she super effective against all of the main classes, she has a power mod against them as well. So she's like quadruply effective against all of them. On top of also having a Roman and Dragon power mod, and you guys know there are a decent bit of both of those, but it gets better. There's a command code that releases with the event that lets you slap the Roman trait on somebody. So if you want that free power mod, you could just slap it on them and then just start doming them for millions of damage. And this is at NP1, by the way. The most that I've done to my Draco is grailed her to 100, so she got marginally higher stats. There's a reason she's very popular and very highly anticipated on the NA server because it's so easy. You can just grab one copy and just start smacking people left and right. I myself frequently find myself using her in 90++ nodes because her damage is just really free. It's super high. If I need her to like not take all of Pastoria's NP, she can just start refunding her own NP with her skills. She gets something like 30% back every single turn. So if you only need her to take out a wave 3, that's 60% she can account for between waves 1 and 2 by herself. She's just redonkulously good. And so the main central point, what I'm trying to get across in this video, is that there are numerous very, very powerful servants that are coming out. I know that you see stuff like the current 21 million download campaign banner. You see Space Ishtar and you're like, oh my goodness, I gotta get Space Ishtar. She's such a valuable servant. People say she's good, and that's not wrong. She is very strong. But if you want to put your account on the best foot forward, pay attention to these extremely powerful servants that are coming out. This next upcoming year especially did feel like kind of a massive power jump in FGO. These servants that we got just feel like the average is much higher than normal, which is normal for gacha games to experience those power leaps. But this one felt kind of ridiculous. I mean, even with some of the more mid servants that came out last year with, say, Pope Joanna, she's very good. I mean, the general consensus of her was like, wow, this is a very strong servant. You just don't really need her. You just have a randomly very OP Arts Looper servant just hanging around. Same thing for something like Nidocris Altar. She's a really strong Arts AoE farmer that has 100% battery that they threw into the general gacha pool. The servants next year are very, very strong to say the released. So just keep your eyes peeled for them. We didn't even get to mention a lot of the other ones that are coming out in 2025. I will probably make a video on that closer to New Year's, so you guys can just be on the lookout for that. But at the end here, let me know what you're going to be looking forward to for the rest of this 2024 year. And I guess if you're just saving for the Lidlum Harlan event, let me know about that in the comments down below. And then obviously I'll expect the obligatory comments of, you know what, ZTL, I'm going to summon for the servants that I want, which is perfectly fine. It's just when you're not able to do the 90++ nodes because you didn't summon for the appropriate supports, you can't point fingers at me and say I didn't warn you. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice rest of your day, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.